have worked in Tableau before?
Briefly. I have a little.
Briefly?
bit.
Okay. How many of you guys have built a dashboard in Tableau? Okay. So we're going to be doing both, which is cool. We'll start with sheets, and then I'll show you guys how to build out a dashboard from there. So Tableau is obviously awesome for data visualization. I've got my Tableau public profile. I only have 4 on here, but when I worked in healthcare, like I was constantly building reports in Tableau. It's just really awesome and versatile and super user-friendly. Like you can pick it up just instantly. So I made this MLB comparative team dashboard last year. You can see the top NL batting averages, top AL batting averages, but if you wanted to see advanced stats, you can drill down. Tableau is also extremely interactive. And it'll spit out this big advanced batting chart. So you can also filter by like slugging percent. So I gotta click this. It's just slow. There we go. So you can filter by any of these fields, sort by any of these fields. It's really cool, really aesthetically pleasing. But today we're going to be building out an NFL dashboard. So this is kind of the Tableau main page. And the first thing that you ever want to do in Tableau is bring in data. So that's what we're going to do. And to do that, you go over here to a file. I always click more because you can just fetch any file you want in your drive. Like if you were to try to look for a CSV file and you click on Excel, it's not going to show up and you're like, where's my file? So I do that. So we're going to be using Dateable Play Data. So some of you guys, Brady and Rick, have worked with this, but hopefully these will be some new concepts and new visualizations that we show. So this is the data we're working with. It's from, which season was this again? Like 2018?
That sounds right. Yeah, 2018. It was the job.
Okay, and this is every pass play that happened during that season. So there's play description. We won't be using much of that. What down it was, how many yards to go, which team was in possession. Yard line number, what formation it was, offensive personnel, defenders in the box, number of pass rushers, the type of drop back. It's got everything you could possibly ever want here. Was it complete? Was it incomplete? Expected points added. That's a really cool measure. Okay, so we've got data here. It's lined up in a way where you can see, which kind of things are numbers, integers, which kinds of things are strings. You can also do really interesting things like pivot the data, and we don't need to, but if you were wanting to do that, you can just kind of do this, and then there's a pivot option. So it's really easy to manipulate stuff. You can filter stuff from here, but this is your main data page just to make sure that your data is in line and ready to go. And this all looks pretty good. So, I'll also just mention, so this is up here. This is where you can like join things if you'd like. So like there's a game ID in here and you could bring in this other games table and join it in. So you can have multiple tables and you can see this join pops up, game ID equal to game ID. So as long as you have some kind of connection, that'll work just fine. And it's really easy. And you can join to 3 things, 4 things, inner join, outer join. So it's really easy to bring in new data that relates to one of your main tables. So there's data. So then here is the main sheet layout. So over here we have all of our fields, and then this is what's called the worksheet. So where we're going to build the visualization. So right now it's a blank canvas. So the type of fields over here, it used to say actually measures and dimensions, but it doesn't anymore. It kind of treats them all the same. But the greens down here are measures, they're numbers. And generally, so these down here are continuous. So you're gonna be able to do math on them, essentially is what that means. Like you can take an average EPA, you can take an average down, which that's kind of weird to think about. So all of these are manipulative. You can do math on them. But up here, like play ID is blue, although it's a number, but like you're not going to want to like add play IDs. That doesn't make sense. So there are measures, dimensions, and then there's also continuous, which everybody knows what continuous means, and discrete, which is like 1, 2, 3. There aren't too many continuous variables here other than like EPA because it's like a decimal. Okay, so let's start building it out. So what you want to do is start dragging things to rows or columns or the marks card. So let's start with this dashboard by kind of defining a question, like what are we trying to accomplish? And kind of just for a quick little demo, I asked myself, okay, let's compare AFC South and NFC South teams and what they do well with passing, what they don't do well with passing, what are their typical formations, what are the typical defensive responses to these formations, who has the longest plays, the most successful plays with what formations. So it's essentially a brief analysis on AFC South and NFC South teams. And so one thing that I want to do to start is just show you kind of a continuous model. So the first thing that we should do is let's create a calculated field. So this is called a calculated field. It's basically like, this is how you manipulate the fields over here. So if you wanted to do like an if-else statement or sum two different fields, you would use calculated fields. And you can see all of these different formulas over here that you can use. But right now, this is going to be a really simple one. So this is what pretty much everybody does when they get into Tableau. They make a number of records, and they just set it equal to 1. And so that'll make it easy to sum. So let's look at offensive play result. Where is that? Offensive play result. So this is a measure. Let's drag this to rows. Actually, let's make this columns. And let's change this to, actually, we can leave that there. Let's drag the number of records to rows. So if we make it a dimension, we can now see the breakdown of offensive play results for every single record. So like, for instance, 0, which would be technically an incomplete pass, but they're also complete passes, in our data set happened 6,820 times. Obviously, the ones like 75 are way less rare, but there were actually 17 during that year, which is pretty interesting. So everything is rows and columns, but this marks card, you can change a lot about the visualizations. So for instance, let's say we didn't want bars, we wanted circles. You can do that. You can change the size, make them big circles. You can do area, which I really like. But one thing just to make this visual easier is I want to filter out incomplete pass plays because that's silly. So I think that's pass result. And we want to just filter to complete passes. So what this is up here is your little filter card. So anything you want to filter to in your dashboard, like we'll also filter for team up here to just AFC South and NFC South teams. We can filter by calculations. If you just want fourth quarter, you can drag that up and just say, give me, let's see, let's just do a range, 2 and 3. So this is just second and third quarter plays, but we don't want that, so let's remove that. So here's offensive pass result. Let's make it bars. Actually, let's make it lines. So that's cool, but let's add a little bit of detail to this. So one thing that I'd be interested to see is which which formations are the most successful with offensive play result. So like does empty, the shotgun, does I formation, the single back result in the largest number of yards on average. So we can look at that distribution by dragging. We want formation, where is that? Offensive formation to the color card. So you'll see this lights up and then it immediately colors it by offensive formation, which is cool. So you notice over here, here's the legend. We don't want null in here because that's pointless. So we're going to filter that out by, again, dragging offensive formation to the filters card. Selecting none, but selecting exclude, so you can kind of do it the opposite, and excluding null. So that's really cool. You can see shotgun obviously is the most popular play. It looks like this. So we're looking for fatter distributions to the right. That means that the play results in more yards on average than one like empty. So empty, you can see it's a pretty steep drop off here, whereas single back, actually you have a better chance of making those 15 to 20 yard gains. So you can learn quite a bit here, but we're going to expand on this and kind of compare different teams. But for now, let's leave this here. So another thing that I want to briefly mention is you can format the graphs with a lot of different things. So I always get a format. I hate grid lines, these lines, so I always take them out. You can just go grid lines none. I kind of like that 0 line there because you can see that's like the line of scrimmage. So I'm going to leave that, but you can easily take it out. Put it back. It's Control Z. So what do we want to call this? This is yards by offensive formation. Cool. So that's our first sheet, really simple. We can name it down here too. So now let's add another sheet. So you can see down here, this is where you add sheets, dashboards, stories. I've never done stories before, but they can be cool. So next sheet. So now what I started to think about was which teams have the best offensive line. And I thought about ways to assess that. And what I came up with was assessing the type of the drop back for each of these teams and seeing how many were how many plays resulted in the traditional drop back, how many were designs, how many were scramble rollouts. You can tell like the teams with probably the most scramble rollouts are the ones that have the most collapsible offensive line. So it's cool to assess teams that way. So that's what we're going to do. So let me just show you how when we drag possession team to rows, we get all of our teams in the NFL. But we want just the NFC and AFC South teams. So I'm going to control click this to filters, select none, and then just go through and click off Atlanta, Carolina, Indianapolis, Jacksonville, New Orleans, Tampa Bay, Tennessee. That should be it, right?
Houston.
Houston. Yeah, that's 8. So that's cool. I'd like to be able to separate it by division now, and that's not a field. So what you can do, this is a perfect example of when to do a calculated field. So you can take possession team, you go to create calculated field. There's like 9 different ways to create calculated fields. You can go to the very bottom, click create calculated field. You can click on an existing field that you want to use, create calculated field. I think you can go up here even, like analysis, create calculated field. So it's all over the place. So let's call this division. And let's do a case when statement. So case. When ATL, then NFC South. And we can copy this. we'll change these in a minute. One Indianapolis, then AFC South. Okay. So Tampa Bay, New Orleans, Carolina, Indy, Tennessee. Houston, and Jacksonville. I'd say where most people kind of master Tableau is probably in the coding itself, like in the calculated fields. I always say Tableau is something that's really easy to learn, but probably really hard to master. Just because in order to master Tableau, you kind of have to master all of the coding language and learn how to do like really complex math things to solve your problems. So we got division in here. So let's drag this now right before possession team, and then boom. So now we have division and team. We can hide this by doing hide field labels for rows. So that's cool. So let's look at just the number of records and columns. So this doesn't tell us much, right? So we can actually go up here and fit entire view. That's a cool little trick. Actually, Nikhil used that quite a bit. So this is just how many pass plays each of these teams had, which doesn't tell you much other than kind of the identity of these teams. You can sort this by like number of records. So you can see Indianapolis had way more pass plays than Tennessee, which had the least because they have Derrick Henry. It makes sense. Tampa Bay, that's really interesting because they had Jameis at the time. New Orleans actually had the lowest. That's interesting. So now let's do the same thing that we did in the last visualization, but with type of drop back. So now we're working with bars. We're going to drag this to color. So you see we have nulls again. That's a problem. So let's drag, control click. We don't even need to control click there. Exclude nulls. We'll leave unknown. So another really easy way to sort is just by dragging these up here. So I want traditional to be first, and then designs to be second. And then let's do scramble. Then scramble roll out both sides, and then unknown at the end. So you're starting to see a little bit better picture. But it's not quite there. So one thing I want to do first is kind of color code these a little bit better. You can do this, edit colors, but perhaps even a better way to like lock these colors in place is to go to type of dropback and edit the default properties of this. So null, it doesn't even matter. We're not going to use it. Let's make unknown some kind of like light gray. Let's make traditional like a darker gray. It's probably good. Okay, so let's make design rollouts. What do we make them? Let's make them shades of red. It's probably good. Scramble, let's make it shades of green. It's an ugly green. Okay, that should be good. So let's apply that now. Yeah, that looks real good. Okay, so we have that now set, but it's still kind of hard to compare, you know, which teams are in the traditional more than scramble, like a higher percentage of the time. So one thing that you can do is change this to go 0 to 100% and look at the percent of total for each of these type dropbacks. So this is another little Tableau trick. It's called a table calculation. So you take the number of records up here, you go to quick table calculation, and we want percent of total. And it's going to default to table down. So it's not really going to do that properly, but if we go to edit table calculation, percent of total, we want across. So for each row, give me a percent of the total. And that does it for us. So now this gives us a really good picture of which.
Jack?
Yes?
So when you're in that like table across, table down, like and sometimes it's like within pane too is like another option. I think like at least for me, I have a hard time picturing what's being calculated. So sometimes you just have to like choose all the options so you get the one you want.
Exactly. So yeah, sometimes you just have to play around with this. Sometimes you can do it by multiple dimensions. Like if you want to sort by 2 different fields, you can. But yeah, a lot of this is trial and error. But if you're envisioning in your head what you want with this percent of table or percent of total, then you can click around and find the answer. Like in this case, I knew immediately it was going to be a table across because it was just, I wanted to find it from that row.
And hey, Jack.
Yep.
Just sitting here thinking about Tableau, I don't think we ever did anything with your divergent bar chart in the paper for the grad class.
Oh yeah, we probably, yeah, that's something we could stick in there pretty easily, actually.
Yeah, but let's just not, that'll be on the revision. Let's just not forget it because it's I don't know how we forgot about that, but we did.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we have this, it looks really cool. We can see things like Houston scrambles a lot. So that's 5.11 plus 8.29 plus 5.47. So that's about 19% of the time Deshaun Watson scrambling in the pocket, which is really interesting. Indianapolis, they have one of the best offensive lines, like historically, and they get into really traditional sets, which is really cool. So it's a good way to compare things that way. One thing that we can do though is compare the defenses on the same viz. So how do these defenses approach these types of dropbacks, these types of offenses that either stand in traditional or scramble a lot? So what we can do is create what's called a dual axis. And what it basically does is measure something else on this axis that kind of coincides with the visual itself. So let's use number of pass rushers. We're going to drag it there. So it's going to break, and that's okay. So dual axis is kind of a crazy thing because it creates a new marks card. So you can see this is the first one. This is going to be the viz that we just built, the type of drop back. And this is going to be our second one, which is number of pass rushers. And then we have all. So we can apply things to all. We can apply just to our type dropback, and we can apply just to pass rush. So you can see this is still being colored by type dropback. We don't want that. We want it to, yeah, just be a measure. Okay, so let's do some surgery here. So we want our type dropback to be a bar still. Okay, so that fixed it quite a bit. You can see it reverted to its normal colors, which is not good. We'll fix that in a minute. That's because this measure names is on the color chart. We don't want that because this is just the type dropback marks card, and we want it just colored by type dropback. So you can see the number of pass rushers, these little circles. That's what those are. So let's edit that marks card. Let's make this just black. You can see how it immediately populates on this axis too. But we don't want just sum of number of pass rushers, right? We want, let's do average. Okay, that's better. So yeah, what this is showing us on the average Indianapolis pass play, this is the number of pass rushers that the opposing team brings. And it goes from 0 to infinity. Let's change the size. Let's actually make this quite big because I want to show you guys how to add labels too. So that's probably good right there. So we can also drag average number of pass rushers to label. Control click. And that goes there. So that's good. But let's change the default properties of this. So I hate that it's like 4 decimals. Sometimes you got to change this. So you go to format.
It's not.
Yeah.
Oh, weird. Okay, so what you're going to want to do, because these decimals are so large.
You can exit.
I keep accidentally clicking that. Okay, think that I'll do it. Yeah, you go to the field itself, you go to format, then this pops up over here. So this is editing your average number of pass rushers field. You can go to, you can do money if you want it, but we're just doing a custom number. Let's go to 1 decimal place. Now that's in label, let's make that inside the black circle. So that's good there. We want to change the alignment to center. Oh, that's nice. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's good. So now we can sort this whole thing, if we wanted to, by average number of pass rushers.
Is this like Tennessee's average number, or the average number of people sitting?
The average number against them. So
Okay,
on
okay.
these plays, yeah. So you can see how kind of the approach that the defenses have, and you can look at this in a lot of different ways. We have defenders in the box, but this is the pass rush approach that defenses have compared to the typical type dropbacks that these offenses have. So you can kind of compare how teams approach them and how the offenses respond to this. So it's interesting, Indianapolis, it's almost like teams know that they're going to sit in that traditional and there's nothing that you can do about it. So teams on average rush 0.2 pass rushers per play less against them. So I don't know, I thought that's interesting. You would think that there would be more incentive to try to disrupt this, to get them out of their traditional flow, but actually teams that are going against Indianapolis pass offenses don't rush that many.
See, I also see it by how much they run the ball as well. Is Tennessee, Derrick Henry, Carolina, McCaffrey, New Orleans, Kamara, you've got to stop those guys with more pass rushers. Or these are only pass plays.
These are only pass plays,
Oh, and that doesn't make sense.
but obviously defenses don't know that, right? So
Right.
a lot of times they're
Oh, that
anticipating the
makes
run
sense.
too.
Okay. Yeah.
So one thing I see here that we could edit a little bit is this. I really want to align that in the center. And these things are kind of easy. You just format and you can change everything about this little label right here. So let's make it black. Make it a little bit bigger. And let's center it.
Do you have access to play action?
Yeah.
That'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so this looks pretty good. What are we going to call this? This is
Pressures.
type of drop back versus pressures versus defensive pressure. Another thing that people like to do when they're working with lots of sheets and lots of dashboards, you can color these down here. So you can kind of know which sheets are going to be on which dashboard. In this case, we're only building 1 dashboard, but I've built as much as like 5 on 1 workbook. So it's like you kind of have to keep things in line. So I like the look of this. I don't think we need to change any grid lines or anything. Tells a story. That's fine, percent of total number of records. So let's build 1 more. And the last thing, this will actually be probably the quickest sheet, but I wanted to assess which teams have the most clutch pass plays. And so this is going to be a measure that I just kind of thought of, like high leverage plays. And there's obviously a lot of ways that you can define that. So what I'm going to do is create a calculated field. Let's call this high leverage plays. And we're going to do a series of if and statements. So let's say if let's only look at the fourth quarter. Quarter equals 4. And let's say offensive play result is greater than or equal to 15. So 15 or more yard pass. And EPA is greater than or equal to 3. Then true, else false. So this is another way that you can filter things is by Boolean.
Is that like third down?
No, so this is any down. Oh, you're talking about EPA?
Yeah.
So if you have an EPA of greater than or equal to 3 on a single play, that means you probably got into field goal range with that pass.
Okay.
So as the result of that play, you're expected to add 3 more points than you were before that play.
Oh, it's an estimated.
Yeah, it's an estimated, it's like how many points you're gonna score. So so if you do like a 50-yard pass from like your 25 to like the opposing 25, I guess, that would probably be an EPA of like 5 or something. Maybe not that much, but it'd be a lot. So high leverage plays. Let's drag that over to filters. Say true, we only want high leverage plays. We also only want our same possession team. So this is a good time to do this. So you can apply filters to other sheets, which is really cool. So you can take your filter, apply to sheets, and let's do this to all using the data source. So now if we go to yards by offensive formation, the first one we made, you can see this little like barrel, I guess. And it says now this filter from that other sheet is being applied here. So this viz is now only showing the breakdowns by AFC South and NFC South, which is cool. Same thing in sheet 3. We just have our teams. So this one, we're actually not going to be using the rows and columns. I don't know, you're thinking, well, what the heck, how can you build a viz? You can. So let's drag possession team to color. And let's go ahead and set these default colors. So default properties, color. Well, let's see. So we actually want
Semi-close.
What is it?
Like semi-close colors to the team.
Yeah, let's create a calculated field that just encompasses the teams that we want. So let's call it possession team new. We can say if, so this is going to be an if statement. If possession team equals ATL, and ATL. Else if you can tab Tampa Bay and Tampa Bay. Now we can just copy this. 5, 6, 7, 8. Oops. See that one? Houston. The order of these don't matter. Jacks. Indianapolis. Carolina. Oops. And New Orleans. And we need an else statement. Else other. So another way to look to see kind of what your field possesses is to describe it. So you can see the formula and then you can see the domain. So all the members. So we have everything we need. We have Atlanta, Carolina, Houston, and then we have our other. So now let's set the default properties. Oh, and also notice, so like if we drag possession team new to color, other is not going to show up, right? Why?
Because it's not
because it's filtered out here.
Yeah.
So that's cool. That overarching filter kind of takes that out, so we don't have to worry about other. So let's set the default properties. So again, we don't have to worry about other. Let's make it Atlanta. We can do this pretty quick. I want that to be pretty vibrant red. That's good. Carolina. Give me that blue. Houston's going to be like a navy almost. That's pretty good. Indianapolis.
And you could probably do white if you wanted to.
You can, yeah. I'll probably do black for New Orleans.
Yeah.
Jacksonville is kind of a gross green. I don't care. Screw it. New Orleans, let's do black. Tampa Bay, kind of a darker red. Maybe that, that's good, whatever. Tennessee, it's kind of a. I'll get by with that. Okay, apply. Cool. So we have our teams. Now we've got our high leverage plays filter. So we just want count number of records. Let's drag this to size. So we're going to size these boxes by how many clutch plays they've had. Boom. So it automatically does it to square. You can also do circles. So like a little bubble chart. I actually like the square. We've used this in quite a few business for SII. And so now what you can do is control click, drag to a label. Same thing with number of records. And then you can center this. Maybe change the font. Let's change this to what? Yeah, it looks pretty good. High leverage pass plays. Cool. So you can see Atlanta and Tampa Bay actually had the most high leverage plays. Or Indianapolis and Tennessee down at the bottom.
They just don't.
I think Houston was the best in that division this year, weren't they?
2018.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that the year that Andrew Luck retired? I think it was. I don't know, before the season started.
So we've got all of our sheets now. Now we got to build our dashboard. So let's rename this high leverage pass plays. And let's go ahead and color it because we can. So we've got our 3 sheets. Now we're going to click add dashboard. So this is where you kind of arrange all your sheets in the layout that you want. So this is kind of like a canvas at this point. And you can do all this kind of manually where you can just kind of fit them wherever you want. Or you could use these things called layout containers to lock them into place. And I never freehand it. I always use layout containers. I've taught Brady how to do this kind of thing. Using layout containers, it looks gross up until the moment that you lock everything into place. And then you're like, oh, that was really nice. So let's get rid of this. So here are 3 sheets that we can add to the page. And what I'm thinking is, since this one's more horizontal, we can add this to the top. And then we can put the other 2 side by side right here. And so let's start by dragging this onto the page. It's our main viz. Let's actually give ourselves some room. So this is how you fix the size over here. So let's go 1500 by 900. Yeah, that'll clear us up some space. So we have these measures over here. We don't need this legend probably for average number of pass rushers. Let's just keep it here. Doesn't matter. Let's go ahead and drag these other ones on. So by shift clicking, it floats it just to like, it's like freehand basically. It's not locked. So I'm clicking, well, and then once you drag it with a shift click, you can move it around freely. But if you weren't to shift click, let me Control Z. So I'm just dragging yards by offense. It'll try to lock it in place with this. So this is why layout containers are so good. So you can shift click the horizontal layout and you can, whoops, see, I accidentally locked it. So there's my horizontal layout container. It's floating. That's what they call it. Now you can lock certain things into the horizontal container and it's going to look really small and smushed, but that's okay for now. So the horizontal ones that we want at the bottom are the high leverage pass plays. And I guess we don't need this because we see the team names. So that's okay. We'll make this bigger so we can see everything. So we want the high leverage pass plays and this one. So let's go ahead and, well, let's drag it out. So I'm shift clicking. We are going to need this. So let's get this out of the way just for now and pop these into the horizontal. So you got to shift click again because you're changing from floating to lock. Same thing here. Shift, drop. Awesome. Okay, so we've got what we need here, but we want to stack this on top of this. So again, it's going to get real gross at first, but what we can do is just shift. Well, okay, so why didn't that work? Well, because this is a horizontal layout container, so it's not going to be able to stack anything vertically. So we've got a horizontal layout container here with two things. Now let's put in a vertical. You can fit a horizontal within a vertical. And then you can stack this on top. Okay, so that's another trick. So you can, so this is just on the sheet, right? If you double click this little thing, you can drag around the whole layout container. You can kind of see there's like a hierarchy of things right here. So it starts with our vertical, and you can dive down into the type of dropback sheet and our horizontal sheet that's right underneath it. So there's layers, and then here are our legends. So from there, we've got this. Let's do one more horizontal layout container so we can attach the legends to the side of it. Let's take this whole thing, pop it in, and then we'll pop, actually, let's do a vertical here because we need to make the legends on top of one another. I'm actually going to add a little blank in here just to give us some room to kind of mess around with those. And we can change the order of these when we need to, because this will actually be on top of this. Let's drag this on. Wait, is this on the horizontal yet? Let's check. There it is. So we just got to fit it somehow. Come on, buddy. Oops. It's not on the fit there. Let's go ahead and pop this into place. That's what we'll do. That still looks gross. Now let's drag this over. Try to lock it. There it is. Boom. Okay. So we want to make this real little over here. One really cool trick is, so right, this is the sheet, and then the next layout container is going to be the horizontal because it's connected to this one, right? So if you double click this, horizontal. If you would double click this, goes to the vertical. And then I can't double click it again, but then it would encompass the other horizontal, but attaches the legends. So we've got a big item hierarchy here. This is a cool little trick. So if you double click, we just have this horizontal layout container. You can easily distribute the contents evenly. Just locks it into place like that. So that's cool. Let's make this a little bit smaller. Okay, so now, right, we want to change the order of this. Add one more blank. One right here, I guess. So we got that legend right there. Let's bring this up. That legend's right there. Okay, so this is starting to look really good. We've got a layout. We can center these if we want. Don't want to center that one. Change any font stuff you want. Okay, so one more thing I want to do before we add the title and stuff is let's give the user an ability to filter this by team. So we only want the possession team new. Let's drag that over to filter. We want all of those. Okay. So now possession team new is in our filters for this. So now what we can do is go to filters, possession team new. So we've got a little filter right here. This is cool. So you can edit filters in a lot of ways. I love multiple value dropdown. So click on that. And I also love apply buttons. You go to customize apply. I don't want it to be called possession team new. So let's call it team. But now we can filter this viz by which team we want to look at. So let's look at Atlanta. So you can see they're kind of play breakdowns. Let's see what Indianapolis does a lot of. So Indianapolis looks like they're most successful in the shotgun formation. Yeah, they run a lot of plays in the shotgun formation. Okay, so last step, let's just make it look a little more pretty. So how do I get this? There we go. I want to grab this whole thing and unlock it. Come on. I guess since it's tiled, it won't let me do that. Let's see. Here's our vertical. That's tiled. We don't want that. So we got our vertical. Looks like we lost our horizontal. That's okay. Horizontal. All this stuff up there. Let's drag our big vertical. So we get a horizontal. Now let's add one more vertical to do a title. This whole horizontal. Pop it in. Let's add a text right on top. Let's call this AFC South. NFC South pass analysis. Let's make it pretty big. Bold. And black. Actually, look, yeah, let's make it black for now. Okay, so now let me pop all this into place. Okay, that looks pretty good. Couple things. Let's drag this over. Don't need that to be that big. What is this? We lost our link in there. There we go. That's better. Let's drag all this up. Okay, I'm satisfied with that. So now let's just make this look more like a title. Center it. Drag it down a little bit. I actually like making the titles white and changing the background of the title. So that's where you go to layout. So this is the layout of the sheet. You get background. We can make it a nice navy red, maybe. That's kind of cool. Make our border black. Last thing, so if you're annoyed by like its fit, you fit the entire view. Looks like these fonts are still a little bit too big. Let's go back and change that. Change this back to 9, see if that helps. Still didn't. Make this a little bit bigger. Maybe don't distribute these contents evenly. There we go. But I got rid of that. So let's change the size of our dashboard actually. Let's make it 950. There we go. So this is the entire view. It's good. Let's make these circles a little bit smaller. Not that small. We got a dashboard. I like we did this in about an hour, a little bit under an hour actually. So obviously it starts with the worksheets and it takes a lot of like brainstorming, like what you're actually like wanting to see. So first you've got to like, you can't just start throwing things on. You've got to think about, okay, what exactly am I trying to visualize? And we've had certain like sessions like in Dr. Pierce's class where we kind of go like, what are we kind of envisioning in our head right now? Are we envisioning a bar chart, maybe a line chart? I've made butterfly charts. I've made Sankey diagrams. Let me pull up my Sankey file.
Yeah, let me, while you're looking for that, Jack, can I add something?
Yeah.
So can you talk about, so, I mean, everything you said is spot on. We want to ask the right questions and kind of see it in our head to see what the results might be and then how that helps us interpret them. But there's also like when you're in a business setting and you're putting the dashboard together, you got to think about the user on the other end, right? That manager who doesn't know necessarily how data analytics works, but they're the one that's going into that environment to pull their report or play with the data. And that the real power, I think, of Tableau is that it is user friendly on the other side so that people can mess with the data a little bit on their own by whatever, switching filters, changing fields, so that you give the power to the user to put the variables that they want to see so that they can see trends and the data in a new light. And that, to me, that is the real power of Tableau, maybe all data visualization, but I know in Tableau is that you give that power to the user to put different variables on, to change the filters, and to really give them that custom view they want to see so that the insights pop out.
Yeah, no, I agree. And part of that interpretability is also tooltips. I didn't really talk about that because we didn't have a need for it. But the user, whenever they hover over something, they can see kind of what they're looking at. And it's, an adaptation, percent agreed. You can change these pretty easily, but so tooltips are also a really clear way to see filters. Like you just said, you can say, what if I wanted to look at just males? You can filter the dashboard to that. What if I wanted to look at just older people? So the same thing could apply to this NFC AFC dashboard. We could say, well, maybe I want to just filter all of this to just fourth quarter. And we would have to, drag a quarter filter and apply it to all of these sheets and then show the filter. But that would be another really cool thing that we could add super easily. So there's so much you can do with it. I was showing the Sankey diagram.
No, I know those categories.
Yeah, so this is the Teamwork Online kind of flow of jobs from May 14th, 2020 to September 1st, 2020. You can see the flow of these jobs.
Either an agency or a team.
Yeah, so the bigger, I guess, tubes, whatever you want to call them, are the most jobs between those things. So manager, non-college teams have like the biggest bulk of the jobs here. So yeah, this is an example of using pretty complex calculations. I actually found this as kind of like a template online, but it uses things like padding. What is this? There were quite a few like calculated fields that were really weird that I had to create, like sigmoids, T. So you can reference certain indexes to pad. Yeah. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on in this, but the cool thing is, like, if you ever want to look up like how to do a butterfly chart in Tableau, there are now so many resources on these things, YouTube videos. So you can figure out how to display anything you want to display. You can see just how hands-on and user-friendly it all is. Like anybody can drag in, like as long as you're on this new sheet, like the world is yours, man. You can do whatever. You can drag play type, you can drag quarter, start coloring by defenders in the box. Like you can just
I think the editing side of it, like to make it look presentable is nice.
Yes, the formatting stuff is really, really cool.
Yeah. I feel like there's got to be other apps that do this, but not in a visually appealing way.
Yeah, you can do things like I could change the whole dashboard background if I wanted to. So dashboard format. I think it's some kind of like blue. Ooh, oh God. That looks miserable.
That's awful.
but you see what you can do with it.
We do like a light gray.
Oh yeah, my UFC dashboard was actually gray. Let me go back
Like
to
a lighter.
Republic. So I have made kind of a grayish dashboard.
Yeah, I like that.
You can do analysis, so you can fit curves and stuff. We did that on some of the Teamwork Online stuff. It doesn't get too statistical. That's the one thing about Tableau.
Because
It's
that's
like,
just an average curve.
yeah,
Or
this is
a
actually,
trend line, I guess.
I think this is actually a polynomial fit. So
Is
you
it?
can do things like that. But like you don't want to use this for like statistical analysis, really.
Because people won't know what the hell.
Yeah,
The general people.
and there's just not like many functions. Like you can't do ANOVAs and stuff within Tableau, or like the most you can do is add this sort of like polynomial analysis or something. I think Rishi actually figured out how to do like a t-test or something. But that's kind of, let me go to analysis. So
Can't you
analytics.
just run the t-test somewhere else and then it put the data into Tableau?
Analytics, you can do all these things like,
Yeah, that's pretty much what you use Tableau for. Tableau's like a visualization.
Yeah, so you can run it all.
I'll also real
Offset,
quick,
yeah.
just point you to this show me tab up here. So this is what a lot of people use when they don't really know Tableau and they're wanting to get started, because it gives them like ideas on what they want, and it gives you kind of what you need. So like for box and whisper plot, try 0 or more dimensions, 1 or more measures. So you know that you want to use measures for box and whisker and no dimensions. But this doesn't show you a lot. You can do maps. But I was taught to stay clear of these just because I find benefit in like thinking for oneself
Yeah.
when thinking about what you want to see. But there's some, pretty brief examples of what you can do here. Gantt charts, those are good for like time series. Cool. Anybody got anything else? This is the third time I've built this same dashboard practicing. I'm getting sick of looking at it. Dr. Pierce, you got anything?
No, that was awesome.
Cool. Thanks for letting me do this. If
Yeah,
you want
I
to stop
will,
the recording-
What I'm gonna, is Rachel Lohman in there?
She's not.
Okay, well, what I'm gonna do with this is, I'm gonna put it up on the hub, which is where we've got other webinars and stuff that the Sport Management Club has done. And if we kind of do some more of this stuff, maybe next semester, we'll just start building a library of these how-to video kind of things on different topics. So we could, cover, whatever stuff, basically whatever stuff you guys are learning in your master's level classes, I would love for you to be able to translate back down to the undergrad so that they're, best prepared to jump in and be successful in the 4+1.
Okay. Yeah, I think that sounds
Is
good.
that, Brady, is that helpful?
Yeah, super helpful, for sure.
Awesome.
Cool. You want to stop the recording, Dr. Pierce?